Hello everyone, DarkOfAllTrades here. As regular viewers of this channel would know, when responding to religious apologists who want to talk about atheism, I very often need to correct them on what the term atheist or atheism means. Now I understand that there are different meanings of the term, and what is meant is up to the person using the term. Does atheism mean the rejection of the claim some number of gods exist? That's how I generally use it, and it encompasses every other meaning that I'm aware of, so I use it as the overarching meaning. Another meaning that is often used is the positive claim that no gods exist. This would be hard atheism or Gnostic atheism. This excludes other types of atheism such as agnostic or soft atheism. In the more severe circles of philosophy, this meaning is commonly used. This definition also forces atheists to adopt a burden of proof, potentially unjustly. Due to this reason, religious apologists like to use that meaning over the former to try to shift their burden. If you are ever in this situation, don't fall for it. Clearly define what you mean when you say atheism and stick to that meaning. Don't let anyone try to change the meaning of the words in your discussion or debate. When they do, carefully but gently correct them, saying that you have already defined what you mean by the term and hold them to it. Otherwise, you risk miscommunication and your message or points will get confused. In this video, we're going to look at a channel called Conscious Philosophy Eric Van Evans, and the video titled Lacktheism, A Problem for Atheism. I wasn't sure what I was getting into when I saw this, and now I'm still not sure what this person's, who I will refer to as Eric's, stance is on theism or atheism. It seems like he wants to have an honest philosophical talk about this idea of lacktheism. So before we get into the actual video, I know we're almost there. Some of you may have not have heard of lacktheism before, and I don't blame you. It seems to be a recently coined term. So what is lacktheism? Lacktheism is exactly what it sounds like. It is the lack of belief in theism. That is, the lack of belief in a god. This is very similar and arguably identical to the definition of atheism that I use. If you don't believe in a god, then you lack belief in a god, right? Sounds pretty reasonable, right? Well, I'm not convinced. What I mainly have an issue with is the term lack. Using it as a word game that I don't particularly care for, the term lack seems to imply that something is missing. There's nothing missing with atheism. I'm not even convinced that atheists are necessarily without belief in gods. Again, this implies that an absence of something, in this case belief, meaning belief is missing or is not there. Like atheists have a God-shaped hole TM somewhere. Thus, using lack comes off as a word game which I generally like to play, but not when it comes to descriptive terms for groups of people. So with that rambling out of the way, let's check out Eric's video.
Hey, how's it going, guys? So I want to briefly discuss lacktheism.
Not to be too pedantic here, but I'm gonna be too pedantic here. Lacktheism is one word. In this case, lack is a prefix similar to in the term lackluster.
So for those of you who do not know, lacktheism is the notion that atheists just lack a belief in God. Now, this is a really erroneous way to define atheism, or to even think about atheism.
Maybe. As I stated in the intro, it depends on what you mean by atheism. If you specifically mean that atheists lack a belief in a god, in a very general sense, you could be correct. It could be erroneous if you want to have a more nuanced discussion about atheism. For very general discussions, it could be fine. I don't like the term and will steer conversations away from it to a term with a more concrete meaning. However, if there are atheists who just claim to lack a belief in a god, then I don't mind using it for them in that situation. But go on, how do you think this term is erroneous?
Think about rocks, plants, flowers, dirt, cats, dogs, babies. They all lack a belief in God. Are they atheists?
No, and this is something that up until a couple years ago I thought was actually correct. By the very simplistic meaning of atheist, all these could be, as none of these things listed except the proposition that some number of gods exist. So it just made sense. The issue was that I missed one very key quality that none of these listed have. That is, the ability to consider the proposition. Arguments require the ability to consider the argument. If I said, wargarble, 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 and then asked what your position on it was, you would likely rightfully respond that you do not have a position on it because you do not have an understanding of what those sounds mean. For you, it is impossible to assess. Do you lack belief in the proposition? You don't know because you don't know what it means. Everything listed here also cannot lack a belief because they cannot even begin to comprehend what even the most simple ideas for the term God means.
So we would never say, hey, look at that rock over there. He's an atheist. He has some good arguments. That would be ridiculous.
You are correct. We would not say that because rocks are inanimate objects and therefore cannot have good arguments. What a weird statement. Though I imagine never may not be correct. I'm sure with enough hallucinogens, someone somewhere may have said or will say something like this.
So that's obviously a really bad way to define atheism. The proper definition of atheism, however, is simply a negation of the God proposition, simply saying God does not exist. Whereas theists are saying God does exist. They're affirming the proposition, atheists are negating it. Simply put.
I covered this in the intro to try to make my work easier. You are using one of the potential proper definitions. There are atheists who say God does not exist, myself included. There are some atheists, however, who do not accept the counterclaim of the God proposition. Not accepting the claim is not the same as accepting the counterclaim. You can always say, I don't accept your proposition, nor do I accept the counter proposition. For example, if I have a rock in my pocket, and the proposition is, the rock in my pocket is painted red. You either accept that or you don't. However, not accepting the rock is painted red does not mean you accept that the rock is not painted red. Not accepting the claim is not the same as accepting the negation. Apologists seem to struggle with this idea a lot.
Now, I think atheists push this Lacktheism argument as a way to evade having to give a defense for their position.
This could be correct for some atheists. I don't think so, though. This would be assuming a motivation rather than dealing with the argument itself. How would you even demonstrate this claim? You would have to know what is in the person's head. However, even if I grant this is accurate, so what? What does that actually do? It is still up to the theist to demonstrate their claim. Can you imagine if this were true for the opposite claim? An atheist would say, I make the claim that no gods exist. To which the theist would reply, well, I lack a belief that no gods exist. And then the atheist would just say, you're just pushing lack-atheism as a way to evade having to give a defense to your position that some number of gods exist. You see how silly that sounds?
Because if you're not making any claims about reality, that's what they'll say. I'm not making any claims. You have to show me that God exists.
They are correct. Not believing a God is not a claim about what is or isn't in reality. It also isn't a claim at all. It is a statement of belief. When it comes to any proposition, the default is to not accept the claim until it has met its burden of proof. If you do not accept that the rock in my pocket is painted red, you're not making a claim about reality. You're withholding belief until the proposition has met its burden of proof or whether the claim can be negated, such as by showing you the rock is painted blue. Until then, the belief that the rock is painted red is likely unreasonable or unjustified. I would have to show you the rock was painted red for you to have a rational belief that it is painted red. Note, there are circumstances where taking my word for it may be all that is needed. For small things like this, you may know that I'm a generally trustworthy guy, and the proposition doesn't really matter, so you may just accept that I'm telling the truth based on prior experience with me and move on with your day.
I don't show you anything.
Technically true, you don't have to show me anything. You don't have to do anything ever. You don't even have to breathe. But this depends on the goal. If you make a proposition, you adopt a burden of proof. Whether you care about meeting that burden is an entirely different issue. However, when you're in a conversation, there are certain rules that we agree to regarding having the discussion. If you and I are talking, I will agree to maintain a relatively friendly tone, and you agree to not punch me in the face randomly. These are just basic examples. In philosophy, when you make a claim and adopt that burden of proof, you agree to meet that burden or else be shown to be unjustified in your belief. So again, you are technically correct. If you just want to make assertions wildly and don't care about the truth of them, then you don't have to show me anything. Just like I don't have to speak politely to you. You are free to do whatever you'd like, but you are not free from the consequences.
So if they're not making any active claims, they have nothing to prove. But of course, that's ridiculous. Atheists make active claims all the time.
While I'm not sure what is meant by active claim here, young Al Borland is correct. Assuming active claim means positive claim, everyone makes claims regularly. So, atheists must also make active claims regularly. Atheists, being humans, make claims about the color of the sky, what time it is, where bacon comes from, the shape of the earth, how long their hair is, and whether they have a cat or not. There are a lot of positive claims that a person could make.
Namely, God does not exist, being one of them.
I don't think so. Most atheists don't discuss their atheism regularly. They're more likely to make the claim, "I'm scheduled to work today," than "God does not exist." I maintain that most atheists are weak atheists, in that they just don't accept the positive claim some number of gods exist, but don't accept the claim no gods exist. They are agnostic atheists. I do make the positive claim that God does not exist. I make the claim mainly on my channel and in philosophical discussions about the topic. I would say I talk about it considerably more than the average atheist, and most days I don't even bring it up. It doesn't enter my daily life. This is another claim that I don't think you can demonstrate, though I am open to the possibility, so demonstrate your claim here. Until then, belief is not warranted.
Or, there's so much evil in the world, there's probably no God at all, or there is no God because of all the evil in the world.
This is called the problem of evil. It was initially put forth by Epicurus in the 3rd or 4th century BCE. It is a common argument that is convincing to some. Depending on what you mean by God, then it could disprove that God, but it doesn't eliminate the possibility of some God existing. It doesn't eliminate an evil God or an uncaring God. Rather than dive into it, I can make another video later if there's interest, but look up the problem of evil if this interests you.
Or there is no God because of divine hiddenness. God's just not as present. Where is he? Right?
This is arguably the strongest argument against a God that has any effect on the material world. If a God wanted to stay hidden and was sufficiently powerful enough to do so, then we wouldn't find it. Doesn't necessarily mean that some God doesn't exist, but it does mean that a God who wants us to know he exists and is capable of letting us know with reasonable certainty that it does exist clearly does not exist. Otherwise, we would know he exists and there would be no atheists. This argument shows that a God with those qualities does not exist, but not a God that doesn't have those qualities.
These are claims that have to be defended. So, in short, we all have the burden of proof. I have to demonstrate that God exists.
Didn't you just say you don't have to show me anything?
I don't have to show you anything.
Yeah, that. You've changed your mind in under a minute of your own video. There are no edits in your video, so this was literally less than 1 minute and you contradicted yourself. Weird.
The atheist has to demonstrate that God doesn't exist.
This is based on the hard atheism meaning, the Gnostic atheism position, which again I do take, but most atheists do not. So sometimes this is true, but most of the time it isn't.
And Lacktheism is a way for atheists to evade having to give a defense. And remember, it just reduces to a psychological state. It's just one psychology. It says nothing about the content of atheism itself, or the beliefs that atheists hold. It's totally devoid of that.
Correct again, Flannel Man. There is no content of atheism itself. That is, other than the non-acceptance of the proposition that a God exists. There are no positive claims required for atheism. Being an atheist tells you nothing about what the person believes about anything else. Even if I grant you the hard atheism position, you only get believe X was not caused by a God. That is it. It doesn't say how anything was caused. I can assert that no gods exist and still not hold a position on how the universe came to be in its present state. Atheism says nothing about that. The beliefs I hold are not based on atheism. I don't believe the sky is blue based on the fact that there is no God. I don't accept that I'm making audible sounds because a God does not exist. I don't claim the Earth is a type of oblate spheroid because no God exists. These are all separate from each other, and whether a God exists or not, the sky is still mainly blue, I can still speak audibly, and the Earth is still an oblate spheroid. No God is required, but even if a God did exist, all of these would still be true.
So, you want to look at atheism as the proposition that God does not exist. And atheists have to defend that and give reasons for why they're making those claims about ultimate reality.
No, I don't. I want to look at atheism as not accepting the claim of theism. So you're just wrong here. That is, unless you're trying to talk to theists who may debate atheists in the future and want to try to force atheists to adopt a burden that they may not necessarily adopt with their position.
So, yeah, it's just a really bad way to think of atheism, and throw that away right away. Take care, guys.
If you want to straw man a person's position, you can absolutely do this. That's it for this video. This whole video seemed like an attempt to define atheism in a way that most atheists do not accept. I'm curious, Eric, if someone is required to put forth the positive claim God does not exist in order to be classified as an atheist, then what would you call someone who does not accept that claim or the claim that a God does exist? I'll bet you'd say agnostic. However, agnosticism is about knowledge, while we are addressing belief. One can believe but not know. What about you, my humble viewers? What do you think? Do you think there is a meaningful distinction between soft or weak atheist and lacktheist? Do you think that all atheists need to accept the positive claim that God does not exist in order to be considered an atheist? Or are you like me and use the overarching meaning of one who rejects the proposition that some number of gods exist? Leave a comment below. Do you think Alrik van Borland made a good point? Is lacktheism just an attempt to dodge the burden of proof? Do you think he really thinks that atheists are that dishonest? Let me know down below. One can think that terms and labels may not be important, but when we have a difference in the meaning of our terms, it leads to miscommunication. I want to avoid that, and that means we need to argue semantics sometimes. As always, hit the like button to show that you don't have to show me anything. If you want to look at my channel as a proposition that no God exists, hit the subscribe button. Along with commenting, both of those really help get my content to more people. It is a good way to support me for free. My Patreon is officially up and running, and I have already received the gifts for the upper level subscribers. If you want to support the channel and get something back for it, consider subscribing there. Or if you just want to help me with a coffee or an energy drink so I can put out more content, the lower level is just $3 a month. Thank you so much for checking me out, and as always, keep learning.